This is ContactTalkRadio.com, consciousness in action, and you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio. Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-hosts, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett's coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Good morning, everyone. How nice to be with you. Thanks for joining us.
Today on Conscious Conversations, we are talking about deconstructing our stories. Our stories no longer need to be written in stone. In this digital age, they can change in an instant. So join us, stay tuned as we explore as consciousness ways to respond to this transformational state.
And here's an invitation to go deeper with us, to connect with us beyond the show. You can join our at our website, www.consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com. And there you find out all kinds of great things. All the podcasts from these shows that have run are listed there, and you can join us and don't have to miss a thing. Both Joan and I write, so our blogs are there. Hers comes fresh off the press on Fridays and mine's on Mondays. You'll find out all the details about the meetups that we both do. Joan in the Tacoma, Puget Sound area, and I do them here in Portland, Oregon. And our sessions, because we work with clients and individuals and groups and online and stuff. And then all the great ways to connect with us on Facebook. What do you got there? You got all those addresses, Joan.
I do, but I want to slow down a little and just say with Conscious Conversations with joanandjanet.com, Conscious Conversations with joanandjanet.com is our main website. So you do have links there to join us on Facebook and on Twitter. And you have my YouTube show there. And any moment now, you'll have the show's YouTube. Actually, you know what you do? You go to our radio show page, and our YouTube channel is listed there. So our latest old shows are there on YouTube as well. I will let you know that Janet, however, is on Twitter now for the first time ever, and she is at Janet Beyond. So you can find out all about her consciousness cookies on Twitter. You can also find her consciousness cookies on Facebook, Janet Barrett. You can find me on Twitter at Joan Newcomb and also on Facebook at Joan Newcomb. That makes it easy. And you can also find out about, as Janet mentioned, her meetups, which are on Tuesday night and on Thursday afternoons in her lovely home in Portland, near Reed College there. And mine are all around the Puget Sound, as Janet said. I actually am going to be doing something different after this weekend. So this weekend, I'm in Tacoma for a Conscious Coffee. It's in that historic building downtown, Bostwick building. It's a triangular building downtown, and in the meeting room up there. And it's on Sunday, November 12th from 3 to 5 p.m., and it's $10 to have a conscious coffee and go really deep in conversation. And the weather's gotten crappy, so I'm going to try virtual meetups for the next month or so, because it's been hard to get people out of their homes when it's snowing. So starting Saturday, November 18th at 3 p.m. Pacific, which makes it 6 p.m. Eastern, you can join me for a virtual conscious coffee, and that is on Zoom. And you can find out by going to our website, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and go to the meetup page, and it'll take you to a link on how to join us that way.
That's great new stuff going on, and it's always fun to start the season off with doing something different as we go inward. Now, you also have a coaching opening, don't you, Joan, for your 12 weeks of transformation?
That is, and the coaching program itself is in the process of transforming. However, if you want private coaching with me, because that's going to change and shift as well pretty soon here, but I do have this one private slot left. It's for 12 weeks to hold space for you. So that would take you into the new year and completely transform your life. And it's consciousness coaching and training, and will hold a powerful space for you to completely change anything you want to change and transform in your life.
Sounds all good. And it all kind of fits into our topic, I think, here about deconstructing our stories and how we all have got this stuff that's showing up that maybe we're familiar with or not familiar with. And how do we deal with it? How do we take ourselves out of the emotional connection and attachment we have to just allowing it back to be energy dynamics, and what in that pattern, in those patterns that each of us encompasses our story, can come apart and be different and enjoyable. I want to enjoy life, don't you, Joan? We want to enjoy life.
Yeah, because at our core, we are veritable picture galleries, and each picture contains 1,000 words. Each picture contains an entire novel of stories, and then we have these core stories, these core pictures that that distort our perception of what's going on around us. And it's an amazing healing time that's going on right now, where these things are coming to the surface, or coming to the surface for other people and triggering our own stories. And so how can we be different as this is going on?
Well, and that's back to the premise that things are written in stone. That's a huge morphic field about how, in an ancestral way, because you are part of your family, parts of your clans, and this is the way we act, and this is how we act as a member in this clan. And you get myths and story built that we each encompass, and we may hold awareness of it or not. And that anymore, that's the delight in exploring as consciousness, that's not written in stone. It may have been written in stone, but it doesn't have to continue to be written in stone. That change can happen. You can shift those things that you feel are holding you back, or holding you in, or holding you stuck, or holding you trapped. However it is that's keeping you from feeling good about yourself. And we're so habituated in our thinking and feeling that we miss sometimes that change is available. And that's why we enjoy consciousness technologies and what they offer. Yeah.
Maybe you need to explain to people what consciousness technologies are.
Oh, well, there's, in the last 10, 15 years, both of you and I have been on this journey, there's been this new way of incorporating science in the quantum mechanics, quantum physics, quantum field, just the way that we're deconstructing in there, we're deconstructing how we perceive what matter is in the universe, and taking ourselves back to what science will refer to it as zero-point field. And we like to warm that up a little bit. That neutral place, ground zero, where stuff is, that, and so we invite grace into that awareness and infinite sea of potential, that there are different ways of embracing that, in how to, if you take stuff back to point of origin, back to particles, that can reform. And there are lots of different, there's Psyche, there's access consciousness, there's matrix energetics, there's human method, and I'm sure there's a myriad of others that I'm not, aware of, about how to be with ourselves, how to be as ourselves. And those are consciousness technologies.
Yeah, and all of them take us back to our essence, as you were saying, and being different with these. Instead of responding to them as if they're in stone, like you said, instead of responding to them as if that's reality, it is taking them back to the energy of it And when you respond to it as energy, then you have a chance to do something completely different.
Well, and it's also the state you hold yourself as you take it back to energy, right? Because awareness is a wonderful thing, but it doesn't necessarily make a difference. And we can use that against ourselves. So it's how you hold that information in the state that it is that we're always inviting our listeners to, the state of unified consciousness, that field, heart-centered awareness. You can call it anything you really want. But it's where you can engage from a different reality set of rules. And reality always has rules, and everybody's got realities, and we share some of them, and other ones are just unique to us. So it's how you put that story together. And in this environment, you can take that story down to its elements, down to its experiences, down to its agendas, and look at it fresh. And maybe not even look at it, just realize that it just needed some attention, and I can hold that differently in my field of awareness that we each are. So,
yeah. Well, you know, and awareness is the starting point. Right. And then there are many ways to respond. Sometimes it is just bringing presence to it or recognizing it, shining the light on it that makes it disappear. So this is a really juicy topic, and we've got lots more to say on it, and we need to take a quick break right now. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we'll be right back talking about consciousness and deconstructing our stories right after these messages.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath, accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and deconstructing our stories.
Well, we were talking about how you have to first recognize something. right?
Yeah, you have to acknowledge it's a story. You have to bring awareness to it, right?
And we are our own myth, and we're generating our myth, and we're all storytellers, and we're all story weavers. And these are these old traditions, long before typing came into place, about how the legend, the myth, kept going on to the next generation. And so we do this. It's a natural place for humans to go, I think, in exploring and explaining their sense of being present. But if you put everybody down around a campfire, you find that there's that, it's in a tangible energy field. Something happens when you sit around the fire, and that calls on those old, deep memories of being, about how it was just you and the sky and the elements and maybe your horse or maybe your guy, the guy next to you, and what came out of that state, and how it could be creative, how it could be real. It was your memory that you talked about, or just the dynamics that happened there.
Well, I was thinking about how there is, between our humanity and our body personality aspect and ourselves as consciousness, there's this whole realm of thought and the mind. And I realized this morning is that it's really our mind is the storyteller.
Yeah, right.
And so, it can often be like, a huge quantum leap to realize that you can change your story and change your life. And that's that whole thought level of reality. But it's still controlled by mind. It's still the mind aspect wanting to tell a different story. And what you're talking about, Janet, is taking it back to its essence, which bypasses the mind and allows for something different that the mind couldn't have made up.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And it's not that, and I'm always explaining this to clients or students or whoever gathers here, is that we're not saying that the past, because it's the past already, didn't happen. What we're saying is it's how you relate to that was an element in the story of who you are. And it's like a different chapter. Right, you can start the book anew. If you see yourself as the writer, which we each are, we're the creator generator of our stories. Something else comes to mind, and it takes you in a different place, and maybe you change how you totally reference the story that was there, and that's creative dynamic at play. So we're not looking to devalue the story. What we're doing is deconstructing the story, and that's what's important.
Yes, for many people that grew up with people denying the reality they were experiencing, it's not useful to say, that story never happened, or because then you're just sounding like that. But there's a difference between saying that didn't happen and changing the experience of it. And I'm stumbling here because I've got two different ideas converging in my head. So when I've worked with people energetically, I offer them the possibility that there are other stories, there are a parallel universe idea, that there's other experiences out there where there's a parallel self that did not experience the past in the same way that you experienced it, and that you can access that information and have a different present and therefore a different future with it. And it doesn't negate, it doesn't devalue the experience that you've been through, but you can go forward without the baggage of it. So there's that, and there's also having a greater experience of yourself as consciousness and appreciation for the story that you went through. Because the more capable of us, the more capable you are as consciousness, sometimes the more complex and difficult the story has been. because, hey, we're really creative. We're going to create a really challenging story to live here, and it's really painful and uncomfortable. But you know what? By golly, I'm going to step up to that acting job and do it, kind of thing. So it doesn't devalue the experience that you've been through, but it's some way of giving yourself a greater awareness of who you are with that story.
You're talking about neutral, right?
Yes,
being able to observe it, and observing is, referencing more through the human aspect. But when you notice it, and then you're looking through total sensory awareness and not dictated by one or the other, you're seeing how you create your realities. And we limit ourselves when we say an event happens and that's it. Because that's not what happens. An event happens, and something happened before that event, and something's going to happen after that event. And it's what it really is a state of information that has come together, and now it's something. And so it took potential, and it formed something, and it became energy, and that has a name to it, and we call it that. And so there's a reality that gets built around that, which almost gives it an allowance to be present. And we take meaning from that because we're relationship-based creatures and we relate to our information. And so it's the ability to go back to that neutral place and notice what was created there, and the reality, the holographic energy dynamic that's at place there, and interact with it differently, to take it back to seeing it as elements. And so if you think in terms of cosmos, and you have the stars, and you have the gases, and you have all these different elements that are in the cosmos, right? And they all come together and interact in different ways. And it's like you take a slice of that, and we call that a reality. And that was real. I can feel it. I can own it. And I get to decide how I want to be with that. And that sets a placeholder for how I'm going to experience who I am in my beingness this time around, or whatever time you're in. And it's taking it back, being in that place where you can observe it that way, and stripping it of the emotions and the personality and those kind of things, which are our framework as human. But as consciousness, that's all just part and parcel, right? It's just noticing apparatus. So it's especially in this time, we were having a hard time figuring what this all was for this show for today. And that's because it is all these elements, and people are kind of realizing that it is all these experiences, and we have them inside, and they're expressing themselves. So we could be surprised by what we notice about ourselves. And it's really a great place to be, though some might not hold it that way.
I think of it as greater consciousness is like this great powerful light coming into form, and when you have a higher vibration coming into form, it can feel seismic. Mm-hmm. And you turn the lights on someplace, I'm mixing my metaphors now, but you turn the lights on someplace, it reveals what's been in the shadows. Mm-hmm. Now it also can disintegrate the shadows, because you shine a light on something and it's like high noon and all the shadows disappear. And we're in this very intense time of shadows being revealed because they're in the process of disintegrating. And that's what we've been talking about is what is our reaction to what's going on, especially if it's something that you've had deep within yourself, and there was like no way in heck was I gonna talk about this, and then some celebrity on the news is talking about that. So even humble non-celebrity people are having the opportunity, because it's an opportunity to clear out those stories, to reframe those stories, to reclaim your power from those stories, and to have a different experience.
Well, that brings a lot of things to mind when you talk about a light going on. and it reveals. And if you've been in the dark and you turn the light on, your eyes have to adjust. And it can be kind of shocking, and especially if you have light sensitivities, right? Which is what happens for creatures that live in the dark. Now, the interesting part is when we don't realize we live in the dark. But what flashed to me was how we all have, or what's popular urban myth kind of whatever, is the monsters in the closet. When you're a kid, the monsters that are in the closet or under the bed. And it's the unknown, right, in the dark. And how we bring that to life during the day. And whatever is in our imagination gone wild or on a tangent, or is pulling information from what it heard about today or saw about today, and then it gets creative with it, and it makes it personal. And, I think we're all still the kids with the monsters under the bed a little bit. And then, of course, that creates that focal energy, and information starts to flow in. Stuff will start to reinforce. The unseen will start to form something, and then it becomes real. And then when it's real, right, the mind can't tell the difference between real and not real. We all know that from looking at the way the brain works. So, what are you creating? What are we creating?
The way I see consciousness creates reality is it creates reality through focus. Mm-hmm. And I think of consciousness at the highest form is diffuse. It's actually outside of time and space. And then as consciousness focus, the focusing becomes more dense until it is solid and real. And as we're deconstructing this, it's a series of tightly compressed pictures. We're like a paper mache of our memories and our beliefs and our concepts, our thoughts, our ideas. And what we're talking about is as you peel away those layers, more stuff gets revealed. But it also doesn't have to be that slow and arduous now. It used to be that you'd go through, Freudian therapy for 30 years working on the same core concept. And now, you can be in and out of there in 12 weeks and have a completely different experience. And the same thing with our life experiences. We can go in for a surgical procedure in the afternoon and walk out and have released, 2 decades of condensed information. So it's amazing time. It's a miraculous time. I feel like we have the opportunity as greater consciousness to coming into form to bypass the things set in stone and go digital and just delete those cookies.
Yeah. Well, I think you're talking about often a habituated thought, right? Because we think we know how things are supposed to be. And that's the setup, right? Because when you think about something that happens and you realize if you can be with it and just observe, notice it, you can see the elements that were at play. Well, you heard something that day, and then your brother did something, and you can see how you came to this place. And it's in being in a neutral place with that, and you go, oh, I pulled that all together, and now I made something, and something happened, and I didn't know I was that powerful or creative. And there it was. Then there's the totally unexpected that happens, or seemingly random, or whatever it is. And we relate to information that comes at us from a place we didn't have an awareness that we were a part of. And that's another way to notice in our stories what feels consciously driven, or in the terms of self set this up, and you've got behaviors and things that you do. So these are the conclusions. And then those things that They can have a sense of blindsidedness or coming from some left field, or so you can hear all this morphic field stuff going on about points of origin and that we interact with. And they're just ways to describe information that's gotten to a certain density, a certain collectiveness. And so now we all hold awareness, especially in this digital age of things happening in Syria that I can know about in the moment here in Portland, Oregon. And you go, oh my gosh, okay, that happened. And physically, I don't know how that happens. I just know, okay, there's Syria in my living room right now, and live. And you go, wow, how did that all happen? So it's how we interact with information and how we allow ourselves to go, whoa, this isn't what I think it was. This isn't what I want it to be. And we get to be more congruent in the difference between our intentions and our expectations, which is what our stories hold.
Yeah. Well, a couple things you were saying. And one is that it can be very overwhelming to have Syria in your living room.
Yeah.
Because how do you cope with that? You know, and then you're getting triggered as if you were living in a war zone when, you know, fortunately, your part of Portland's very peaceful. The other thing, I got the pictures you were talking, and something you said reminded me of the scene in the original Matrix movie where suddenly what he's seeing becomes these green lines, you know? And these green lines. And I have no idea what that is. But they're calling. So these green lines are calling. Hello. So we're being called from the Matrix. Yeah. So, but that's what happens. I think when you start to relate to your stories, you deconstruct them and see them as energy, experience or perceive them as energy. You bypass the feeling of being in a war zone, and to just the flow, like you were talking about.
Mm-hmm. And then you get to choose. Because you're in the experience of it, because the mind can't tell the difference, right? And so in memories, it can't tell the difference. And whatever emotional state you're currently in is going to totally color the memory, the past memory, the long-term memory. And it's fascinating how that works. So what it means is that anything at any time can be different. And you can reframe, we use the term reframing when you're taking elements back to energy and then to potential and utilizing them that way. And you just, we are so in the moment that we don't notice that we're in the moment. We don't realize that that's the power of being now and being present, and that, no, it's been this way, it's always been this way, and why would it be different? You can feel that with people, and you go, because it can be different. It's because you've made it this. And that's a hard place sometimes for people to grapple with, I think.
Yes. You know, and when you are viewing your life as if those stories are real, or if you are viewing your life as if you are your body personality, that's when it gets painful and challenging.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about shifting your perspective, your experience really, because it's more than just a seeing thing. It's an experience of yourself as greater consciousness. It's not that things become more manageable, but it becomes easier to go with the flow, easier to shift with the transformation. Don't you think?
Yeah.
San Francisco's calling you now. We're getting all sorts of callers, but just not on the show.
But they're out there. They're connecting. I think okay, so that shifted something around. Better go back. I've lost that tracking there. Go ahead.
We were going. shifting to a greater state of awareness and a greater state of experience.
Oh, okay. So what comes to mind is the whole question of neutrality. And so here you are. Any of us are right here in this moment, and we're all together in some way, form, or another. And we have ideas about that. We have judgments about that. We have concepts about that. We have expectations and intentions and all these different things. And any of that is subject to change. So what you want to do is notice how you're relating to where you are right in the moment. And is it in a state of, oh yeah, grooving, I got it, I feel the state, which is what we hope you're doing, is feeling this state that we're in as we look at all this. And feel how things soften perhaps, or can change, or you find where you're rigid and you go, no, that's not possible. And you go on to the next thought. And what you did was just establish the boundaries and your story. And the stories are full of all these incredible different things when you look at a lifetime. I mean, we love to hear people's stories, right? And you can certainly see the patterns that show up in people's lives. And did something happen that totally changed the direction? And we get this all the time through events and experiences and traumas and joys and trials and tribulations and dancing, right? It's all these different states of information that are malleable, that are expansive. They are not these at one time hard. And so there are things. There's a star up there. Well, we look at the star and it looks solid from this perspective, but it's really a collection of stuff, right? And that's why it's called stardust. And so it's really not what you think it is. It's what you think you thought it was, but then you go deeper and you deconstruct it. You see how the illusion that you're running at it on one level is helpful, but then, it makes a whole different thing if it's just a collection of gases and dust and stuff. And this way we want to be about life, fluid and free-forming and enjoying, being able to enjoy what is stuck hard rigid. Now there's something, a lot of people do that real well now. They enjoy their stuck hard rigid.
Well, yes, for some people, the harder the better. Hard is good.
Yeah.
And hard is valued. It's more valid if it's hard and difficult.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's part of the story, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's part of the story. And just imagine for those people who are so attached to the story being solid and real, how difficult it is for them when it starts to disintegrate.
Or different information comes in that now is irreconcilable because I've been holding this viewpoint, right? And what do I do with that? And how do I hold for both of those at the same time? And most people don't appreciate that they can. They just go nutty between the two of them. So,
yeah, that's so interesting. Because, we can experience the world from a powerless viewpoint, or we can experience the world, actually powerless or powerful are equally experiencing the world, from the physical perspective or the human perspective. And we're talking about experiencing it from a more infinite, expansive, and beyond the paradigm of power experience when you're experiencing it as consciousness.
Power's tricky, power and force, and anymore that conversation doesn't hold up for me. The word I find myself using is dynamic. How much dynamic is available? And because we have these real huge morphic fields about power and force, and especially that's something that's coming up a lot, right, between genders and between people and wherever, and how much who's got the bigger stick and who's got whatever, and it puts you into position of thinking and frameworks of thinking and stories of thinking. And this is what we're looking to get out of and outside that box of what you think this is. So if I use the word dynamics and I just, okay, that doesn't have that charge, it doesn't have that morphic field, and it explains where something can happen and to the degree that something can happen, maybe. And what happens when I reframe, right, and I use that as my value and go, oh, okay, it's all dynamic. Okay, it's really big over here, and how do I want to relate to that? And so often, Joan, and we haven't really talked about this week, is how we, in our stories, are with others, right? Because we're relation-based creatures. And how are we with our families? How are we with our generational ancestor information? And how much that's part of how we interact with our own information.
Yes. And that's a very good point. How we were talking earlier about how you can, I'm trying to remember the phrase you used, because it had to do with being in acceptance with those stories, or it's not surrendering to, but just
it's neutral.
Neutral, yeah. You had a better way of describing it, but but the picture I got was not resisting them, so that they no longer had control over you. In not resisting, you get to be bigger than they are.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, so for instance, if I have a bunch of stories about my family of origin, when I go home, I'm going to instantly be 3 or 5 years old, and I am going to be the little kid whose brothers beat me up, or I'm going to be the rebellious teenager who my father was da-da-da. And if I can, one, be aware that those are stories now. Yes, they may have really happened, and they're at this point, I'm 58 years old. So I can be aware of them as stories, and then I can respond differently. And what happens is being able to accept and drop the story and be in the present moment and respond differently to these people. I realize that those brothers who were so mean are just complete henpecked wimps now, or what, you learn something different about them. So that's just sort of a very broad example.
or we'll just give them the grace that they were just who they were, and and it was the way you set it all up, because that's your story, right? And that sets you on your course for your life. Yeah, it's about that. The last week or so, I've been it's come into my awareness that I think compassion, peace, serenity, gratitude, appreciation, all those words and states and emotions are really consciousness. All right, that we're holding, because humans are so worried about survival, and so when you get off that point and you go, oh, this is how I feel okay in my world, that's the dance that's going in all the time. It's not consciousness out there, it's consciousness in here, and using this self form as an expression to interact with information and feeling and stuff. And so it's, for me, that's a place where, oh, look how creative I am. Look, and I can love myself. Now, I don't see consciousness as love, because I see it as more neutral. But that sense of love there, that agape, that is what's available, right?
And that's going into a whole great big juicy topic. So hold that idea because we need to stop for another commercial break, but stay tuned because when we come back, we're going to be talking about consciousness, deconstructing our stories, and some big juicy stuff.
Is your soul calling you to do something more meaningful with your life? Do you feel crazy for wanting to quit your secure job? Perhaps you are waiting until you retire to do what you love. Maybe you are too daunted to follow your dream. If any of these match your life, then Joan Newcomb's Purpose and Passion Coaching Program is just for you. In just 12 weeks, you will discover who you essentially are and why you are here. Learn to live as your greater self and navigate with conscious mastery. Go to joan-newcomb.com. That's joan-newcomb.com for all of her coaching programs. Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you are dealing with? Take a journey into your enlightenment with Janet Barrett. Janet is a subtle energies empath accessing the field of potential with warmth, humor, and support. She will help you to hear what your inner voice is saying. She will share with you how to appreciate who you are now and offer you new ways to understand and transform your issues. Reach her at www.janetandbeyond.com. That's janetandbeyond.com. Again, janetandbeyond.com. Transformation is possible. You can enjoy new outcomes in your current experiences. They can happen in the blink of an eye.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet, and we are talking about consciousness and deconstructing our stories. You had something big and juicy you were going into.
Oh, I think it's just about enjoying what I've created, right? I mean, not, and feeling for me in my story. Right. And each of us do that. And there can be a reveling of, oh, look at that. That was really, it's kind of like you watch the movie and you go, oh, it's coming, and you react. And you're really in the story and you have that experience. And then it's being able to pull back and go, yeah, that was a good story. And because it took you places. You did different things, you felt different things, and you thought different things. And so we're all going to have a story. And if we're lucky, we have many stories. We have all those different roles we play. And, there was a time in your life, I was pretty rough. I was not nice. And then you go, oh, but that was then. Now, hey, I'm really a neat person, and I really like to share about life, and so you can change, and sometimes we've set it up to be hit hard in order for that change that state that we've been holding to get changed. It's like Caesar watching with the dogs, right? You got to change the state of awareness and the dog behavior, and we're kind of that way with ourselves, I think.
We're that way with ourselves, and we're also that way with other people.
Oh, gosh, yes.
And so we don't realize that people can fundamentally change, and we're still viewing them through the slides of our experience with them, 10, 15 years ago. So I find this, in the comments sections on Facebook and all. It's like, oh, I like reading the comments. And then you hear these people just foaming at the mouth about something the way somebody was, 10 years ago, and you don't realize that they have gone through serious therapy and are in major recovery now, and they've been in recovery now for 20 years, and no, they don't do that anymore. So change is possible, and if we can allow that other people can change, that also gives you permission to know that you can change and that everything can be fundamentally different.
And that is how we help each other.
Yes.
Because if I take someone out of being a problem mindset, which is what we do, and you're a problem to me, and then you go, well, if they're just a challenge, so let's downgrade this a bit. Who's showing up here, right? And then the way I respond and engage with them is coming from a different place. And it can be very challenging at times to do that. But I've seen powerful thing. Okay, dynamic stuff happen when we let go of the way we perceive something to be. Outrageous things can happen when we do that, when we allow it. And it's us extending that state that, the golden rule, like and treat others as you'd like to be and all that. I would love someone to offer me that I'm potential. And what happens when I hold that blooming? I do it for clients all the time. We do it for students all the time here. So much happens, and it's things you can be conscious of in the moment, and then it's things that, maybe down the road you go, things have been different since then. Right? So, and the story changes.
Yes, exactly. And often we don't even notice because we have shifted our state, and it takes us a couple months later. It's like, I went to Janet's place for a meetup, and my whole life reorganized. Well,
yeah, that can happen.
Well, let's tell people about how to go deeper with us and connect with us beyond the show, which is that we have a website, consciousconversationswithjoanandjanet.com, and there you can listen to all our podcasts. You can read our blogs. Janet writes wonderfully on Mondays, and I write wonderfully on Fridays. We also hold meetups so that you can have these experiences with us in person. If you're in Portland, Janet does hers on Tuesday nights and on Thursday afternoons in her lovely home near Reed College, and then I do them around the Puget Sound. The most recent one I have coming up is this Sunday in Tacoma. I'm going to be at Tully's from 2 to 4 p.m., and that's the Tully's that's downtown, doing a conscious coffee. And then after that, I'm going to experiment, since we're going to some really crappy weather here, and it's kind of hard to leave the comfort of our home, so I'm going to come to you virtually, and we can have virtual meetups. And the next one I'm scheduling is November the 18th. It's on a Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m. And you can get more information about that at our website, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I jumped right over our Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. So quick test, Janet. quick test. This is going to. This is good
with that too.
This is going to require you to access the other side of your brain.
God,
how would you find us on Facebook?
Facebook, you're Joan Marjorie Newcomb, I think, right? And then I'm Janet Barrett. And then we have the Facebook Conscious Conversations. I think those are the things. A lot of people get a hold of me on LinkedIn, which I really appreciate and want to comment on. Thank you, everyone who gets a hold of me.
Yeah. And you know what? I think if people go to Conscious Conversations on Facebook, they get a different group. But if they type in the whole show name, which is Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, then they'll find us.
Okay.
And then Twitter is at Joan and Janet is the show's Twitter handle. And I'm Joan Newcomb, and you're a little bit trickier. You're Janet Beyond. You got kind of sexy there when you you signed up for Twitter.
That title. So, and the only thing I will offer on Twitter is my consciousness cookie for the day. everybody. So I'm not out there bothering you too much. If you would like a reminder about being conscious, you can get it on the Twitter feed and other places. I release those daily on Facebook and LinkedIn. So they're good to have. So,
and we're also on YouTube. So the show Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet is on YouTube, and then I'm also on YouTube, Joan Newcomb, but you can find my YouTube videos also on our website, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We said that really quickly. We have a whole luxurious minute before we slide into home. So this is a good time to appreciate them and their contribution to the morphic field.
Oh, listeners everywhere. And then all those that join us on podcasts. Live listeners, and then our podcast listeners. And they're all listeners, and they're all around the world and wherever. And thank you so very much, because Joan and I, we've been doing this 3 years now, I think, Joan. Mm-hmm. And we have just this is enriched and embraced our lives and added to our story and how we serve in the world and how we are and who we be. And we don't even have to know each other personally, face to face, but we have connection. And that's the truth of it, right? Is that we can feel each other. We can feel each other in the state and the wonderful places we go. Because we're busy tracking what we think in our personal self, but also what's out there and feeling, and giving it voice is what we want to do.
We really appreciate you contributing to our morphic field and contributing to the morphic field. So no matter when you're listening to this, no matter what time or space, you have been here in the moment with us. And we really appreciate you so much. You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan, along here with Janet. And
thanks, everyone.
Tune in next week, same time, same channels.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. And thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.